Have your tongue for that.
As Season 1 of House of the Dragon nears its conclusion, it is abundantly evident that the first season's main goal was to advance the plot toward the inciting occurrence. We get another episode that feels every bit as long as its 67-minute runtime, packed with multiple plots, some new character development, and plenty of defining moments that could reflect the direction the show goes in Season 1's final 2 episodes. This happens as we continue the build-up toward something major happening. Although Viserys is the most crucial character in Season 1, House of the Dragon is fundamentally an ensemble piece. With his life now in danger, more on that below, it's crunch time. Characters are now setting themselves up for the struggle for the throne that will follow the king's inescapable demise. We all know Viserys' end is near, and it's heartbreaking to watch him deteriorate episode after episode because it's obvious he learns from his errors, he misses Aemma, and unquestionably regrets the decisions that resulted in her death and only wants to keep his home together. But this is Westeros, and these folks are con artists. Therefore, the idea of keeping the house together is just as doomed as the health of our dear king. After another time leap, we begin The Lord of the Tides, which moves us forward a few more years toward the impending civil war that will break out once King Viserys passes away. But first, another succession dispute needs to be resolved because Lord Corlys Velaryon was seriously hurt in a battle in the Stepstones, where it seems like there's always some sort of conflict going on. His neck was slashed, and the resulting fever seemed to be an almost insurmountable obstacle. There must be preparation and finalization of plans. In last week's episode, Corlys made it quite apparent that he wanted his grandson, Lucerys Velaryon, who is actually the son of Rhaenyra and Harwin Strong, to succeed him. Vaemond, Corlys' brother, isn't too keen on this, though, and insists that he should be the one to take charge while whispering the obvious. Lucerys isn't a real Velaryon. The Princess Rhaenys is split between her brother-in-law, her grandkids, and, why not, herself, because she believes she has lost both of her children and will soon lose her husband. When the big man falls, someone has to step in and take over. This contentious issue is discussed throughout the episode. Rhaenyra and her new man Daemon travel to King's Landing to present Lucerys' case to Alicent, who is now in charge of most royal affairs, with the help of her constantly cunning father. They also visit King Viserys, who is mostly bedridden, sedated on milk of the poppy, and, if we're being kind. After arguing her case to Rhaenys, the dispute ultimately goes before a session presided over by the Queen Alicent and the King's Hand Otto. Vaemond is present to argue his case as well. Alicent and Otto will undoubtedly rule in favor of Vaemond. At this point, Otto has spent decades establishing the case for his ancestors and against Rhaenyra's and isn't about to stop now. He argues that an adult ought to be in charge of the Sea Snake's fleet during the impending conflict. When Viserys enters the room, he is no longer taking his medication and is very, very ill. Rhaenyra is about to argue Lucerys' case. The room is astounded by his presence as it is by how ill he is. It takes him a long time to get to the throne, weighed down by clothes and accessories that clearly weigh more than he does, and his decision that Driftwood is settled takes even longer. The current heir and incoming monarch is Lucerys. As Corlys stated. Surprise of surprises, Rhaenys is also on Rhaenyra's side. Over the course of Season 1 of House of the Dragon, Daemon Targaryen has undergone a lot of development. He was basically a threat when the series initially began, and Rhaenyra's appointment as heir was largely intended as a safety measure against a mayhem that would erupt if Daemon somehow gained the throne. It's become evident that Daemon has been repositioned as someone who has gained a moral compass and whose side we should be on, despite the fact that he murdered his first wife and is now married to his niece. A lot to ask, believe me, I know. When it became clear that Lena Velaryon, his second wife, would not survive childbirth, forcing Daemon to make the same choice that Viserys did with Queen Aemma, he refrained from performing a forced C-section and gave her the power to make her own decision. She regrettably opted to be killed by Vhagar, but at least she was given the option. Daemon helped carry out a strategy last week that would have people believe that Rhaenyra was someone to be dreaded, but in reality produced a win-win situation that allowed Lena to flee to a new life with Sir Qarl, potentially blossoming even more with Rhaenyra by his side. Although Daemon still has his temper, he now tends to reserve it for exceptional occasions. In contrast to the first half of the series, when it was evident that his brother needed assistance climbing the steps to the Iron Throne, he was the one to assist him. It's an act of respect, not out of sympathy. Daemon no longer cares about the throne. Instead, he cares that his brother be respected for the kind, generous, and regrettably naive man that he is. It is also obvious how the rest of the action will proceed when Viserys rules against Vaemond. Yet it's just fascinating to watch how it develops. Viserys is enraged when Vaemond dares to point out the obvious that Rhaenyra's children were born outside of marriage because, despite being ill and wasting away, Viserys still will not tolerate any disrespect for his daughter or her family. Considine does a fantastic job portraying someone who is barely alive but still feels a great deal in this episode, and this sequence may be the highlight of it all. Vaemond calls Rhaenyra a whore, but Viserys draws his knife and demands Vaemond's tongue when he goes further. The most violent and horrifyingly hilarious moment of the series so far occurs when Daemon assures Vaemond he can hold his tongue before slashing his head clean in half. The actors portraying the Targaryen Valyrian offspring and grandchildren change with each time leap. Alicent being informed of a situation concerning the prince is one of the first things we learn about in the episode. At first, neither the incident nor the specific prince being discussed are clear. When Alicent learns that her son Aegon has groped a young servant, she goes full Shiv Roy fake ally victim blaming. But you've got to keep your reputation intact. The Hightowers haven't stopped plotting and big picture thinking, and they won't stop now. Alicent sees to it that the girl receives some of the tea that Rhaenyra received in a previous episode. Aemond, now played by Ewan Mitchell, now appears precisely as you'd expect a wicked Targaryen of the past to look, smirking with a faintly evil look in pretty much every scene he's in, while Aegon is busy being a jerk and a general loser. Since claiming Vhagar for himself and losing his eye, he has also developed into a star fighter, and in this scene, we see him defeating Criston Cole while they are practicing in the courtyard. The episode ends with Aemond truly threatening his nephews, Rhaenyra's offspring, at a meal hosted by Viserys in the Red Keep, so it's critical that we understand exactly how deadly he has grown to be. For a brief moment, it appeared as though blood would immediately start to pour, but Alicent manages to contain her younger kid. This occurs after Aegon harasses Rhaenys' granddaughter, Jaehaerys' intended spouse, and a number of tongue-in-cheek toasts, which Viserys, who is already naive and is now very ill, obviously won't catch up on. The two Targaryen Hightower lads basically go into full douche mode when Jaehaerys gets up and starts dancing with Helaena, who just basically said how much being married to Aegon, her brother, sucks, and it's only going to get worse. There is conflict here, and it will soon reach a boiling point. The interaction between erstwhile best friends Rhaenyra and Alicent, which Viserys requests at the Red Keep, is the only positive aspect of the meal. The two toast one another and appear to wish that things had turned out differently, despite the fact that they both obviously know what will happen when Viserys dies. These two were forced into a life neither of them had chosen, even though they were friends and may have craved more. Everything feels like the calm before a enormous life-changing storm. The entire realm is aware that Viserys is in very bad shape. Nobody will be whispering because everyone who witnessed his grand entrance toward the throne knows. Civil war is imminent. And it's about to happen because at the episode's conclusion, Viserys is seen struggling one final time. He tells Alicent and not Rhaenyra again about the Song of Ice and Fire prophecy and the prince who was promised, despite the fact that he is missing an eye and essentially his entire face. Alicent hears him say, "It's you." It's unclear, however, whether he is aware that he is speaking to Alicent or believes he is speaking to his daughter. We have the advantage of knowing that Viserys is not referring to either of the aforementioned individuals because we have watched Game of Thrones. If anyone is to blame, it's Jon Snow. They are unaware that that is a few hundred years away. And Alicent is unaware of that. We also don't know what the recently widowed queen is thinking about when Viserys takes his last breath at the episode's conclusion. Yeah, he really is dead this time, but we'll find out in the final 2 episodes. Because it's conceivable that the hour for battle has come.